We've now got to this stage of the proceedings where we're going to discuss the Z Clause of the Year Award 2022. Before I do, just a little reminder about Z Clauses. I suspect, well, this has come up in several topics. It certainly came up in our discussion group that we held next door. So Z Clauses can be additional clauses or amendments to existing clauses. We do need Z clauses to make bespoke to different sectors of the industry. We just don't need as many as often get written. In terms of clients, we need to think about and challenge if a Z clause is really actually necessary, and we need to think if a Z clause is to alter the risk profile, at what cost will that be? The amount of clients, not all, but some clients seem to almost have a sense of pride that I had a client recently, we deleted 60.119 and it meant the contractor, it cost them loads of money, we did really well out of it. But how well really will you do out of it if they don't do very well? What's going to happen to your future tenders? What's going to happen to those tenders? So altering the risk profile will come at a cost, and sometimes I don't think clients always recognise that. So follow the principles of the contract in terms of clarity, word count and contractual language. So if you are going to write a Z clause, follow those same principles that the authors of the contract instilled, which is to make sure that we're not adding in subjective phrases and increasing the word count and such like, and do flowchart any proposed amendments just to check for yourselves that they actually work. NEC took a lot of trouble to write flowcharts with all the contractual processes, and do that with your Z clauses to make sure they also work as well. Now, this is a personal client award for largely positive Z clauses. Now, so what? GMH Planning are giving out a personal client award. But these are my clients in particular. This isn't an extensive list. And if you come up to me with a beer afterwards, hang on, where was our name? If I've forgotten you, remind me and I'll consider it for the future. But these are particularly clients I've worked with in the last couple of years where I would actually say that they are very positive in their Z clauses. Some of these names are a surprise. The Environment Agency, Heathrow, have been a previous winner of the Worst Z Clause of the Year award, but now they're on my good list because they have very few Z clauses. HS2, I've already mentioned, so some very positive Z clauses there. The Midlands Highways Alliance, from memory, 4 Z clauses or 7. All right, you could do a lot of damage with 4 Z clauses, but these were very high level, next to no Z clauses. Parliament, and as I said, myself and John and Barry Cheeves and Richard Patterson, we've been working with Parliament for a number of years, and we kind of got them to think about those Z clauses, and they've rationalised those down to a much more sensible number. And personally working with University of Liverpool and Portsmouth City Council, I was quite proud to launch a revolution internally. I didn't do it. I set them and got them to question and challenge, hey, why have we got all this? They led their own revolution, and now they've got next to no sort of Z clauses, or not ones that are what I would say are any harm. Contractors, read the Z clauses and amended contracts. Don't forget, sometimes people tell me, I've got no Z clauses, but we've got a butchered contract. They don't mention that bit. So you've got to consider both. And read these at tender stage to understand what's been changed and how that alters the risk profile. Challenge any clauses you would not be wanting to have to price, and preferably before you sign. There's a good idea. This is contractors, don't have a set of generic Z clauses you always pass down to subcontractors, other than the ones you really genuinely need for internal governance. I've seen this a lot, where contractors have got their own Z clauses they pass down, so even though their compensation events maybe they can claim for, they've deleted them from their subcontractors. What's that going to encourage? So again, we shouldn't be having that at all. Regular frustrating amendments that I get to see a lot of contracts in what I do, very often amending the ambiguity clause to say we're not very confident in the documents we put together, so let's put that risk onto the contractor. At what cost? You laugh. I can't believe you're laughing. 60.1, very common deletion of 60.112 and 13. So ground conditions, weather, all a contractor risk. Raise your hand if you've had that in your contracts. There you go. It's a bit of exercise. Good industry practice added as a defined term. So they actually take the trouble to introduce good industry practice, obviously from other forms of contract. Additional disallowed costs. So that had extra reasons why costs can be disallowed. some of them. You can understand some of them less so. 61.3, make it all compensation events time-barred, not only once the contractor is obliged to notify. Timescale deadlines within which to claim defined cost. I've seen this one creeping in. You can't claim a defined cost if you've not if you're not claimed for it within 3 months of it being incurred. Anyone seen that one? Okay. You can understand the sentiment of it, that it's like, don't wait until a year and a half and then tell us this cost. But then is that going too far? So I'm saying these are regular amendments, not definitely saying all of them are bad, but I don't know. The original contract didn't feel the need for it. Is there a need? Maybe that one's going too far. X18, adding extra exclusions to what would be the excluded matter list for limitation liability. I had a client recently that said they'd included X18, and then the Z clause was delete 18.1, 2, 3, and 4. Interesting. Deletions to elements of the schedule of cost components, not necessarily wrong, but depends how much comes out. And then introducing concurrency as a term and a vague process. We all know concurrency, there's no such thing in NEC, and yet some clients have taken the trouble to add these in as an actual Z clause. I was really worried about doing this segment because it's come to my attention that some clients are using this segment as inspiration for the next year's work. So I'm a little bit nervous, but let's keep this within these four walls. Let's not share this one maybe with our clients. Now, when I advertise Z Clause of the Year, I never actually say what I'm doing with it. I just advertise it. And whenever I get nominations, it's always bad ones. Occasionally, there's a good one. And in fact, there was very few nominations. It was very easy to give. And I'm not just giving it because he was here this morning, but I have awarded the best Z Clause of the Year to HS2. I've shared it with my group next door because it came up. So you'll be aware, 14.3, the project manager may give an instruction to the contractor which changes the scope or a key date. The problem with that clause for me is that they can now instruct an earlier key date. Both of those should be capitalised before someone corrects me. So the project manager can instruct an earlier key date and then can assess that as a compensation event, whereas normally acceleration has to be by agreement. So that is a problem clause to me. HS2 have taken the trouble to add in a Z clause that say, in summary, that any instruction to bring forward a key date has to be by acceleration. There's an enlightened client. They didn't have to do that. So credit there to HS2. But that was it. That was all the good nominations out of the way. Let's get on with the show. Okay, and the nominations are as follows. Now, everything in white is the standard clause. I won't insult all of your intelligence by reading everything out, but you'll be familiar with the list of early warnings and the reasons you can notify. You should be notifying an early warning, both parties. So everything in white in these next few slides is standard. Anything in red is what's changed. So what they've added in this one is you can also you have to notify an early warning for anything that can change the accepted program. Planners, how many early warnings are you now going to be raising? It doesn't say in what way could it change the accepted program. We've added an item, we deleted an item. Something's changed from 80 days float to 76 days float. Is that really a concern that warrants an early warning? So overkill. That was in the PSC contracts and got deleted for that very reason, and yet some clients. So these are real life examples of in the last year and a half or so of clauses that I've witnessed. This is a wordy one. Now, you could tell by the number of words it's a Z clause, and I'll just give the gist of it. So that this subcontractor, within 4 days of an early warning, it then say that they, try to skim read this, so they notify the contractor of the assessment of the effect of the matter of the early warning, and then go on to say that we want to know about sort of cost and time implications. So really, they're merging early warnings with compensation events in a Z clause, which shouldn't be. We need to separate those two processes altogether. So very ill-advised. 60.1, the following events are compensation events, and then number 6, the project manager or the supervisor does not respond to a communication from the contractor within the period for reply. So that's a bona fide compensation event. And what was the amendment? And the contractor has notified them of this failure, and a further 7 days has elapsed without response. So any time they don't respond, you've got to give it another week to be incompetent before it would actually then be a compensation event. So buying themselves an extra week. Could you please stop taking photos of these? These are not a good idea of ones that we should be including. X24, one client felt the need to add in a retrospective effect secondary option. Notwithstanding the date of this contract shall have retrospective effect to the date, not Dale, upon which the contractor first commenced its services in connection with this contract. So setting up a clause to know, we want you to work before we set up the contract. So don't really see the need for this one. Z5, this is a cracker. I can't believe this one didn't win. If the fact this didn't win just shows you what's coming. The employer, the contractor agree that the price includes a risk contingency amount of, in this case, £20,000. The CE contingency is solely for the payment of compensation and cost quotations which have been submitted in writing by the contractor and have been approved and instructed by the project manager. Okay, that's not the bad bit so far. Well, let's go on. Okay, it's interesting. Where are we going with this? So, the next bit. Where the aggregate value of such approved compensation events cost is less than the CE contingency, the contractor sum shall be reduced by an amount equal to the excess of the CE contingency over the aggregate of such approved compensation event costs. We've not got there yet. So that bit is saying, okay, allow 20 grand contingency for CEs. If it come under, we want that back. Last bit. Notwithstanding any other provisions of this agreement, costs in excess of the CE contingency are the contractor's sole risk and are exclusively for the contractor's account. So can I repeat? No one should be laughing in this segment. These are real Z clauses. 10.2. What does 10.2 say? Anyone? We're talking about it all day. Now, I love this one. The parties, the project manager and the supervisor act in a spirit of mutual trust and cooperation. Right, I'm going to show you how they've amended it. There's only one word change I want you to see, and I'm really interested, Rob, in your legal opinion as to this change. It's been amended to say, what do you reckon? Have we got a new level of definition here? Utmost cooperation, not any old rubbish cooperation. Utmost. Is that a behavioural word? Utmost? Okay. That was a corker. 66.2, so in white, that's the good bit. So white is implemented compensation events, not revised except as stated in the contract. So once we've agreed to see it's implemented, it's full and final, that's it, you can't go back into it. The amendment was delete 66.2. I might have added the please, but it was delete 66.2. So what does that mean? That we can go back and reopen compensation events. 13.4 added some nice new words into 13.4 to stop project managers rejecting things for high-level reasons. So if they reply to a communication, they always had to reply, but NEC4 added in the words insufficient detail to allow the contractor to correct the submission. Just making it clear that you can't give a high-level reason, let the contractor know what they need to do to put it right. So this amendment said delete insufficient detail to allow the contractor to correct the submission. I'm glad you lot can laugh. And so we get to the winner. How do we top all of that? And the winner is, it's a clause associated with 61.3. You'll be familiar with this clause. This is the time bar clause where if a contractor fails to notify within 8 weeks of becoming aware, you lose the right to claim for it unless it's one the project manager should have given. We all know this, right? So about 2/3 of the compensation events you're time barred on if you don't notify within the timescales. This particular client amended the clause, and what do you think they did? Have a wild guess. What did they change? The 8 weeks. Okay. Any offers? 2 what? Days? Worse than that? Now, to balance this, we all know that when you notify a compensation event, they've got to respond within 1 week. Yeah? So I think I've got it on the next slide. So they've got to respond within 1 week. So bear it in mind, obviously, to keep the balance there, we're obviously looking at these timescales. They reduced 8 weeks down to 24 hours. So to be fair to them, what do you reckon they reduced 1 week down to? 4 weeks. Thanks for your nominations, and hopefully we're going to be receiving less nominations. Let's have some good nominations. Let's HS2. Very rare we've given a good Z Clause of the Year award, so let's hope we have a few more of those next year.